How's everybody doing today? I certainly hope you're doing well. It's time for story time. And I like to let people know whether or not it's a true story. For the most part, it's not a true story. However, there are certain parts of the story that are in fact factual, and I'll be sure to let you know what parts they are. But for the most part, it's just a story in which I created. The name of the story is called Dr. Rainmaker. So let's go ahead and begin, shall we? In the year 2008, there was an individual by the name of Charles. Charles was 45 years of age. And Charles decided that he was going to go from the weather business to biology. But prior to him being in the weather business, he was involved in this thing called atmospheric research. And he did that for several years. And then he had the opportunity to become a weatherman on television. Not just everyday weatherman, but one of the most popular news stations in the state of Missouri. That's a darndest thing. Well, hell, he was there 7 years. His father was involved in atmospheric research as well. Matter of fact, his father was involved in a very tragic event that occurred in August of 1952 in England. Yeah. You see, the Royal Air Force back then, this is an actual fact, for sure. The Royal Air Force was involved in what is called cloud seeding. And they were seeding all of these clouds, and this experiments that they were conducting there were from 1949 to 1952. Now you see, on August 15th of 1952, it is theorized that the Royal Air Force was involved in a massive experiment dealing with cloud seeding, in which 90 million gallons of water were dumped on a little town called Lynmouth. And the flooding was so bad that it had destroyed a bunch of buildings. Big old boulders were just rolling down the middle of the street, in which 35 Brits lost their lives. His father was involved in all that mess. Oh yeah. Because you see, the Brits wanted to use some sort of weather manipulation for the upper hand dealing with other armies. Because as people know, well, back in the war, World War II, well, the Brits almost became a country that would be taken over by Germany. I mean, it was very close, you know what I'm saying? So they wanted to further themselves, so if that were to ever happen again, that maybe they could figure out a way to manipulate the weather from afar to control the movements of ships and armies. So these are why these sorts of experiments were being conducted. Now that part is a fact. So, you see, old Charles's father, he was involved in all that. Yeah. And the funniest thing is, his father's name was Rainmaker, which would mean Charles's name or last name is the same, which is true. And it just was a big old coinky-dink that Charles himself was also involved in atmospheric research, then turned into a weatherman. But you see, he had an idea. Oh, Charles did. He had such an idea that was so secret, so top secret in his mind, because nobody knew about it. Everybody knows that if you create something, if you invent something, whether it be software or hardware or something mechanical or a certain process to do a certain thing, you have to get this thing called a patent. And in order to get a patent, you have to relinquish all of your plans, all of your mechanical drawings of how your idea is to work, and present that information to the United States government in order to be issued a patent, so that way you can make money off of it, to make sure it doesn't infringe on someone else's patent, right? He didn't want to do all that. No sir, no ma'am. No. Because his idea was so brilliant. Nobody else has ever done it before. He's checked covertly checked to make sure that while he's checking to see if somebody else had done the process in which he's thinking, he can't give away his idea through the searching of that certain procedure. No, sir, no, ma'am. Because everybody knows eyes are upon your search data. They sure are. Big O NSA, the biggest eyes in the world, are recording all of your searches, right? All of your, let's say, search inquiries. And you don't want to trigger off somebody going, now wait a minute, why is he searching for this and that and this and that? Let's take a look into him. Follow him around, sneaking around. He doesn't want all that. So he's got to be really careful what he's doing. So to find out, to see if the information even exists in what he's thinking about, he's going to the library. He's pulling up these textbooks, and at the same time, he's studying to get his PhD in biology, because he has such a brilliant idea to incorporate atmospheric research and biology together to where he can actually make all of these different plants all over the world where they are not going to just disappear. Because there's so many plants and animals that are on the brink of extinction. But he's figured out a way in his mind where that's no longer going to be a problem ever again. Because old Charles, he really believes in plants and animals and all that sorts of things. And hell, we need animals on this planet, right? And if you think about it, you and me, we're just animals too. We just have this thing called communication, or vast communication, some sort of intelligence. But who are we? Who are humans? I mean, when you really think about it. If you had just one person and he's on one little boat in the middle of the ocean, and you went up in a satellite and you looked down, you probably couldn't even see him. That's how tiny we are. Well, we might be tiny, but still we have this thing called communication. And we have some sort of intelligence where we can use our hands to create things and make things easier for us and help maybe plants and animals and who knows what. So I tell you what, about 8 years go by. It's 2016 by then. Hell, he started going to school for biology in 2008. He's been in school for damn near 8 years. You imagine that? Oh my goodness. And he's getting ready to get his PhD. He sure is. Oh, I tell you what, he's got a couple more tests and he's going to be right there. Wow. Well, he's on his little spring break there, and he gets a phone call about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday. And he's kind of told that his father's no longer with us. Yeah. Old Charles's father, he just kind of like, he left this earth. Well, it's not like a real big deal because old Charles and his father weren't real good pals. I mean, they talked on occasion, maybe on birthdays or Christmases and all that stuff, but they weren't the best of friends. So Charles got to kind of break away, and it's a good thing he has that, spring break there to give him time, so it's kind of good timing when it comes right down to things. Because hell, he's got to fly out to California and has to pretty much tidy up his affairs, but he's the only child. So it's not like he's got to be arguing and fussing around with siblings on property or wills and all that nonsense. And even though he didn't really get along with his dad so well, his dad did will him out everything. I mean everything. So it made things really easy. So he had to fly out to California. And he had to cinch up his house and try to figure out all the things, dealing with the property and what's he going to do with all the furniture from the 1960s and such, right? Because he had a pretty good sized house. Then he had to figure out bank accounts, and he had to figure out the will and just make sure everything went smooth. Well, he knew how to do all that. Because I tell you what, when you're a weatherman, you have to deal with the administrative side of things as long as being a weatherman. So he knew how to do all that. It's no big deal. So hell, he's in the garage of his dad's house, and that kind of ladder is up in the ceiling in the garage. He had one of those. So he brings down that ladder like this, and he wants to go up there and look in the kind of like the attic of the garage. Because he's cleaning out this house, and he's selling, having little garage sales and taking stuff to dump and all that stuff, right? Because he's going to turn around and rent that house. He's going to go back to Missouri, rent out the house in California. You know how that goes, right? Or go through a management company. So he's got to tighten up that house real good, make it look good, repaint it, maybe do some floors, change out some toilets, something like that. But he noticed when he goes into the garage, there's some boxes up there in that attic. He can kind of see them from an angle, right? So he turns on the light, he brings down that ladder, he goes walking up the ladder, he looks over to the left, there's not much there. Maybe some pictures and such, right? Old towels and rags and clothes and box of this and that. He looks over on this side and there's a little briefcase about this big. But not your everyday briefcase. It's a briefcase about this thick, right? Because usually a little briefcase is only about this thick, right? But it's pretty good size. I mean, it's kind of briefcase you'd put maybe some shoes in. Big old boots or ski boots or something, or ice skates. It's pretty good size, about this thick. About this size. So he goes to move that box there. It's heavy as hell. Like there's magazines in there or something, right? He grabs this box. That's the only thing up there. He grabs this box. He's kind of pulling it down and taking it down the steps there. He puts it on the counter. He opens it up. That's what it is. A bunch of paperwork. Jeez. He was kind of hoping there'd be gold in there or something, right? You hear those stories. Old folks are putting gold in suitcases or, bunches and bunches of money that hide it in the wall or who knows what. Oh, no, it's just a bunch of papers. So he's sitting there and he's got these papers and he's pulling out these papers and he's stacking them up in big old thick stacks like this, right? And he starts looking through them. He's like reading them and such. And what's it talking about? It's talking about that operation that the Royal Air Force conducted in 1952, August 15 to be exact. That's right. Yeah, where they seeded all the clouds and such. They made it rain. They made it rain so damn hard. Well, 35 people lost their lives. And even to this day, the Royal Air Force denies any culpability in that operation and the loss of life of that little town, Lynmouth. So he's going through all these papers here, see, and he was like, well, hell, this is the proof that the Royal Air Force was in fact involved. Because he's got like time signatures of when he got on the plane, and he's trying to conduct all the chemical experience because they put some sort of, I believe it's iodide silver or something of nature. I don't know the exact name of it, but they seed these clouds and they impregnate the clouds and try to, let's say, instigate a reaction to make it rain. He's got all the documents here that prove that they were involved in all that mess. Or at least his father was, directly. So he starts reading all the little notes and such of what happened that day and leading up to it and such. And he's pretty fascinated. Because, hell, back in the day, his father kind of denied it all. Because he didn't want to have any personal responsibility for the loss of life of the 35 Brits that were actually washed out to sea because 90 million tons of water went dumping down on that little town. Well, he kind of like put all the things back in the briefcase there. And he figured, well, it doesn't really matter now because his dad's no longer with us. What's it going to change? I mean, hell, you're talking about forever ago. What does it really matter? So he decides he's going to take all this paperwork. He's going to have it all shredded. Because, after all, he is the son of his father. And if this got out, he wouldn't want to be attached to that. So he's got to get all this stuff shredded and or burn it or something. Right? He can't give this away in a garage sale. He can't just take this anywhere and just throw it in the garbage because people are nosy. You know how they are. So that's exactly what he does. He goes to a store, he gets a shredder, and he says, man, it takes him forever. And hell, he gets like the first, big old stack of papers. And he goes, forget all this. He just goes out in the backyard, opens up the grill, starts a little fire, and he starts burning. Boy, I tell you what, they burn up just like that, just in no time. But I tell you what, he sure did like that little briefcase. It wasn't really a briefcase. It was more like a box, but it looked like a briefcase, but it's a really thicker kind of briefcase. He took that with him. He figured, wow, this is a really good briefcase. He's going to take that home with him. That's what he did, too. Darndest thing. So he gets everything wrapped up, and he puts the house on the market there to rent it and such. Because he's going to go back to Missouri. He's got to get his PhD. And that's what he does, right? He gets a couple little nibbles and bites, and somebody wants to rent, and he's showing the place around. He says, you know what, this is just too much of a headache. So he turned around and he hired himself a management company. Management company, they deal with all that. You know what I mean? They check the backgrounds. They verify employment. They get the first, last security. They take maybe $100, $200 a month. He doesn't care, right? Oh, Charles, he flies back to Missouri because he's got to get that PhD. And that's what he does. And once he gets that PhD, well, guess what? Everybody in the world's he can say that he's a doctor now because he's got a PhD in biology. You figure that? Darndest thing. Things are going pretty good for him, too. Oh, yeah. But you see, Charles has got to figure out a way to actually implement his idea into the private sector. Because now he's got a PhD in biology. He has vast knowledge dealing with atmospheric research. He was a weatherman for years upon years. Even though he wasn't very good at his predictions, he still was a weatherman, right? So he's got all this experience behind him, plus he's got all of the bookwormage. And what is bookwormage? Well, that's kind of like monolingual, because you know I got my own language, right? Dealing with learns and Robinesque. We got our own language going on. But that's basically somebody who's got their nose in a book for 8 years. He knows everything there is to know about biology. So now he's got to incorporate the atmospheric research with the biology to come up to an end result to make it where no longer, ever again, will the world have to worry about different plants becoming extinct. Right? How's he going to do that? He's got to get a patent. If he wants to sell this, he's going to have to get a patent. He's going to have to relinquish the formula, the mechanical drawings of how he's going to do it. But in doing so, he's going to have to present that information to the patent office. But the patent office, they're going through all kinds of stuff. This is why people that invent these things called perpetual motion machines, people at the patent office are trained to be able to look for certain ideas. And once they come across those ideas, they notify these big companies. And the big companies, they notify the individual that's trying to get the patent in the first place, and they buy them out. You hear about it all the time. You hear about it all of the time. People will tell you all day long that fuel injection did not come into play until the 70s or the 80s, and that's just not true. Fuel injection was available decades before then. Decades and decades. But you didn't find out about it on the commercial end of things until later. But on a military level, fuel injection was around forever. It sure was. But of course, all of the industry, they gave you carburetors to sit there and monkey around with. And for all you old-timers out there, I'm sure you remember, for example, what's a good vehicle to pull from? 1969 Dodge Charger with a 4-barrel. Remember those? Right? Yeah. Remember what you had to do when your carburetor kind of give you a hassle? You'd have to put in there to try to get a quick start on it. Right? Then, of course, we have fuel injection now. So he knows all this. Charles knows damn good and well that people are in the patent office. They're digging around looking for some sort of new technology. And as soon as they get a hold of it, they're going to contact the big companies to buy them out. So that way it doesn't collapse industries. Right? So what's he going to have to do? He's going to have to go to a foreign land. He's going to have to try to get his idea. And you don't even know what it is yet. But I do. You're going to find out because I'm going to tell you about it in this story. But you see, at that time within this story, he can't tell anybody. He can't even tell you. I know what it is because, me and Charles are friends and I wrote the story. So Charles decides he's going to go out to Brazil. He flies out to Brazil. He's got this PhD in hand. He's got all this experience dealing with atmospheric research. Of course, he was a weatherman. Not a very good one, but he was. So he knows how everything works. Dealing with, well, you start out with a seed. And then, of course, you got these places like Monsanto that are genetically modifying these seeds. Right? That's been going on for umpteen years. And, of course, you got Congress and all of our, let's say, upper echelon, just passing stuff through the FDA, without even checking it. Oh, yeah, that's good. Oh, it's Monsanto? Okay, it's good, right? Without even challenging it, without even having to go through some sort of test and such. And you and me are let's say, the test subjects. So they're not even going to know what's going on with, genetically modifying all of these plants and such, or seeds and that. What kind of effects it's going to have long term. Right? So Charles, he goes out to Brazil. He starts meeting with these other doctors. These other professionals dealing with plants. And he gets a little list of all of the plants in Brazil, in the forests and such, of which plants they consider that are at the level of extinction. Or they're becoming so rare. So he's getting this little list there. He's checking it twice, too, and he's not even Santa Claus. He takes it back to Missouri, and he's trying to incorporate his atmospheric research with his biology together. And he has an idea. But he's had this idea for over a decade. So he's writing down. He's got his own little code. Kind of like Monty. Monty has his own little code when I write. So that way, if somebody picks up a piece of paper, they don't even know what the hell it says. They can't take it anywhere either. You know what I'm saying? You got to have that in life, man, especially when you write notes and that, and you're thinking all kinds of different inventions or who knows what. You got to have some certain kind of code where you can read it, but nobody else can, right? He's writing down all this stuff. He knows what it says, right? So I tell you what he was going to do. He was going to incorporate a very small seed of the plant that is almost at the level of extinction to the cloud seeding of the water molecules to create the raindrops, right? And he was going to incorporate them together. And he figured out a way that instead of having, when you are dealing with very small plants, you have really fine little root systems and such. But no, he didn't do that. He figured out a way that the triggering device would be the momentum through gravity of the raindrop falling from the sky. So as the raindrop would fall from the sky, the plant would start to grow immediately. And by the time it hit the ground, it would have a root forking system like this, a two-pronged forking system, that would actually affix itself into the ground. And then later, of course, it would begin to grow and the roots would span out and the plant would grow into its normal size. That's what he decided to do. But he's got to do this under some sort of secrecy. So he's going to have to sign non-disclosure agreements with all of the other scientists in that country, along with the people that are involved in biology, so that way this doesn't get out. Because he doesn't really know if this is going to be successful or not. But he is theorizing that per 1 million drops, there would be one plant, at least one plant, that would affix itself into the soil, and then it would flourish from there. Because you see a lot of these places in the rainforest, or a lot of these places all over the world, they're inaccessible no matter what kind of vehicle you were to use. You'd have to get in there and plant these plants in there by hand. But you can't do that. I mean, it's such a vast area. So what better way to do it by using rain? Rain itself, because of course you would have the plant that would affix itself into the soil, and the other droplets around would be giving it immediate moisture to give it a chance to flourish. That's what he did. Oh, yes, he did. So he had to experiment. So as he went to these other countries and he signed the non-disclosure agreements with everyone, he went up into the plain and he's trying to get the formula just right. And he figured, again, for every 1,000,000 raindrops, at least one would fix itself into the soil. Even though he's got 100 or more of these experiments going per 1,000,000 raindrops. But of course you got to figure that the raindrops falling out of the sky might hit a tree branch, or might hit a tree, or might hit a bird, or might hit another plant, or be some sort of interruption that would not allow the plant itself to affix itself into the soil. So you have to keep all that sort of things in mind. That's a possibility. But at least one plant per 1,000,000 is about right. So he goes up into the plain. They're doing the cloud seeding. And he's doing the little formula, making sure that just everything is just right. And they conduct their experiment. But how's he going to know if it actually worked? It's going to take several weeks. And the only way he can find out for sure is the country in which he's dealing with is going to have to send up a plane with high-performance cameras that can essentially see a June bug walking across a leaf, that sort of thing. And he's going to get the actual area through GPS of where all of the plants should have fallen. So this is a long process, right? But if it works, boy, I tell you what, it's going to be a good time, isn't it? Because then these countries, these other countries, aside from the United States, will be able to make sure that these plants that were on the brink of extinction will no longer be on the brink of extinction. And those plants will be able to grow and flourish like they had prior to becoming on the brink of extinction, if you get my meaning. So he's got all these deals going on with all these different countries, and he's trying to explain to all these scientists and biologists and other atmospheric research individuals on how he plans to do all this, and how he's already got a test run going on in Brazil. Then he went down into Venezuela. Then he went down into a lot of the South American countries, because the soil is going to be real soft down there, see? And you're going to have the system where the root system is like a fork and it's going to affix itself into the soil. Whereas you can't really do that in Kansas, I guess, right? Maybe in certain areas, but a lot of areas, you know, the soil is really thick, or it's like clay down in Georgia. Soil is a little bit more difficult to work with, right? Different parts of the country would be difficult to work with, not to mention you got to relinquish all of your, your plans on how you plan to do something. He doesn't want anybody to get a hold of this, because after all, it's his idea. I tell you what, about a year goes by, and the results are coming in from Brazil that this has worked. He's got the photographic proof to prove that this specific plant has now grown and it's flourishing quite well in a certain area. And he's going to other countries, even more countries. Now he's headed out to Europe. But you see, just like everything else, something that is so significant like that, the word's going to get out. Somebody's going to leak something somewhere. That's exactly what happens. Because guess who gets wind of it? The United States military. Because once again, the United States military wants to incorporate his idea. They have even a better idea. And it doesn't deal with plants. No sir, no ma'am. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that, all these experiments went on through all these other countries under some sort of top secret measure of where they're cloning, sheep and cows. And you can bet your bottom dollar that they've cloned humans. They're just not going to tell you about it. Because it breaks a lot of, let's say, or it brings to the surface ethical questions. Right? Of course, we've all heard about test tube babies. We've heard about cloning. But if you actually clone someone, well, seeing that they don't have a father and they don't really have a mother, there is no artificial insemination, there's something crazy going on in the lab. Is that ethical? Well, no, it's not ethical. But who cares? When you're a military might, you're trying to figure out a way to combat a potential enemy. Do you really care about ethics? Chances are the answer to that is no. So here was a Saturday morning about 10 o'clock. Well, old Charles there, Dr. Rainmaker, he had to go to the store and that. You know, we all got to do that. We all got to go out and get our groceries and such. Go get a new pair of socks or breeches or whatever the hell it is. He's out there shopping, tooling around, and he's got his bags and such. He's walking over to his car there to get in, and he's accosted by two fellas in suits. And they identify themselves as being members of the Secret Service. He's like, whoa, 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 whoa. He is like, wait a minute. The Secret Service, why are you here? It doesn't even make sense. They're like, well, Dr. Rainmaker, you need to come with us. He goes, well, I'm not coming with you, so you can just forget it. I mean, Secret Service deals with, you know, counterfeiting and things to do with dignitaries and the president and all that. And he's not even a part of that. They're like, no, sir, you're coming with us. I mean, that's just a fact. We don't care what you say. You're coming with us. Of course, they pull back one of their coats and show him their metal detector, if you get my meaning. Oh, boy. I tell you what. Well, he goes, well, can I at least get in my car and put the bags in here? I don't want anybody stealing my brand new socks, my breeches, and all my groceries and all that. And, well, they ain't going to have any of it. For the most part, they grab him by his shoulders and they just toss him in the car, and that's all there is to it. He didn't even get a chance to put his groceries in the car. They're just right there on the ground. It's going to make somebody really happy, the guy parked next to him, huh? So they whisk him away. And he ends up in some office building. He doesn't even know where the hell he's at. They got him sitting down there. They have a guy sitting right there with him. They got him handcuffed to a table. He's got a handcuff on one arm here and handcuffed to the table itself. They're going to have a little chatty-do with him. Some guy walks in a suit, identifies himself of being with the United States military. And he's got an A51 badge right here. It says A51 and his name, or his last name. Yeah, Mr. Schmidt. I was thinking, oh God, what is going on here? We got Secret Service and we got A51. Who is that guy? Guy comes in, he says, Mr. Rainmaker, I'm Mr. Schmidt. And I work directly as a private contractor with the United States military. And we'd like to talk to you about your biological endeavors. We've been monitoring you for some time now, about 8 months. And we've noticed you got all these little arrangements going on in other countries. And what's really fascinating, Mr. Rainmaker, you did not submit all of your, let's say, mechanical drawings, you know, what you wanted to do, about how you do it, with the United States Patent Office. Well, is that a crime? Well, no, it's not a crime. Just because you didn't submit something that you invented to the Patent Office, that's not a crime. All that means is somebody else can obtain the information or obtain your knowledge or obtain what you've done, replicate it, and patent it themselves. That's all it means. It's not a crime. And that's what Mr. Rainmaker tells him. It's not a crime. What's your problem? He goes, well, Mr. Rainmaker, this is the thing. We know everything about you. We know everything about your family. We know about your father. We know that your father was involved in the August 15, 1952 incident that occurred in Lynmouth. We know all about it. And we also know of what you're doing with the implementation of the cloud seeding along with the seeds, where you're planting all of these plants that are on the brink of extinction, and you're quite successful. And it's a brilliant idea, but guess what, Mr. Rainmaker? We want your knowledge for a top secret operation that we're working on ourselves. And you're going to help us with that, aren't you? He said, no, I'm not going to help you with that. Why am I going to help you with that? You know what? I'm doing biology. You know, I got a PhD. I'm a doctor. He's getting kind of boisterous with him, too. He's like, I'm a doctor now. I'm the guy that went through all the schooling. I'm the guy that figured all this out. And now, for some reason, somehow, some way, you want to incorporate this into some sort of military scenario? Well, forget it. I don't have time. I'm busy. I'm a busy man. That's what he told him. Oh, Mr. Schmidt, he wasn't going to have any of it. He's got that A51 badge. Can you imagine what that would be? A51. When you think of A51, what do you think of? Well, if you're thinking what I'm thinking, you're exactly right. Oh, Mr. Schmidt there. Yeah, he's a private contractor. Kind of like DARPA. For Area 51. So essentially, they're telling Dr. Rainmaker, they don't care if he's with biology. They don't care how much school he has. They don't give a darn. They don't care. He's going to figure out a way. They're going to use his mind to incorporate this into some sort of military situation that's going to help the military, that's going to give the United States military the advantage over the enemy. And can you imagine what that would be? Can you even imagine? Oh, Dr. Rainmaker, he's not dumb. He knows what they're thinking. He sure does. He knows what they're thinking. So it's not like he can agree. It's not like he can disagree. It's not like he can say no, because essentially they just kidnapped him from a parking lot at the store where he went to go pick up his socks and his britches and groceries and all that stuff. Hell, all his stuff sitting there by the door, but that's kind of irrelevant by now. His car's sitting out in the parking lot. By the time it gets dark, they'll probably have it towed. He's in a big old problem now, right? So Dr. Rainmaker, he figures, well, you know what? I'm going to have to say yes, because if I don't say yes and I don't volunteer my knowledge and my services to the United States government, they're just going to kidnap me anyway. It's going to make a lot of things easier if I just say yes. So that's what he does. He says, okay, I'll help you. I'll help you. I'll drop what I'm doing after going through all this schooling. And Mr. Schmidt, he goes, you know what? That's a wise decision. He goes, now listen, we're going to pay you. We are going to pay you. But you're just going to have to stop all this stuff with the plants. Because plants don't win wars. No, sir, no, ma'am. Just because you have a plant that is on the brink of extinction means diddly nothing. If you have another country that's attacking us or one of our allies, you can have as many plants you want in the ground. It's not going to win a war. It's not going to win a battle. Do you get my meaning there, Dr. Rainmaker? Yeah, I get your meaning. Because it's not like you're not going to be paid. We're going to pay you well. But we need your knowledge. We need it. Because after all, Dr. Rainmaker, just like Monty, he's got his own code. Nobody can read it. You can get all the code breakers in there you want, but nobody's going to read it in any, let's say, ample amount of time to where they can decipher the information to figure out what he's saying in the first place. It'd have to hire a whole separate team for that, right? So he says, listen, I'll agree to work with you, but listen, please, can I go back to my car where the store was? I don't think all my things are there. Somebody probably stole them by now. But I really need to go back and get my britches and socks and get all my groceries. And I'll work with you. I'll give you my word. You're already monitoring me anyway. You know I'm not going to run off. They're like, all right. So they take him back to his car. They said, now we're going to be watching you. And we've been watching you for 8 months now. So don't think you're just going to run off. He's like, no, I'm not going to run off. So the next morning, by 8 o'clock in the morning, he gets a phone call from old Mr. Smith. One that had a little badge there called A51. Mr. Schmidt says to him like this. He goes, you know something? You're going to have to pack up your things, and you need to drive your happy ass out to Nevada. You're going to set up shop. We got a house already ready for you. You don't have to do anything. It's already furnished. We got everything there for you. All the refrigerators stocked. We got you lots of socks and breeches and all that stuff. Because you need to be, come next Monday, you need to be at A51. We're going to hook you up. We've already got your clearances, everything. So he's like, yes, sir. So he's trying to make his affairs or tidy up his affairs. He only has a couple of days to do it. He's not going to rent out his house because that's his house, right? He packs up a little bitty suitcase. He grabs that little suitcase that he got from his father's house because his father died in California. He had to go there, and he saw that big old thick briefcase. Remember that? It had all the papers in it for what happened in 1952. He brought that one with him. So he drives out to Nevada there, and he goes to the house that they already got set up for him. First thing he does is open up the refrigerator. Oh, I tell you what, it's packed to. Oh my goodness. It's got like the best kind of eggs in there. It's got like ham, fresh vegetables, soda pop, and beer, all that stuff. It's just cram-packed full of stuff. I tell you what, Mr. Schmidt wasn't that nice in the office there when they had him handcuffed to the desk. But he sure did fix him up as far as the refrigerator goes. And it's furnished, and it's not furnished like 1960s like his pops was in the California at his house. No, it's furnished well like today. Hell, it's creeping on, well, 6 o'clock at night, phone rings. They're saying, now you don't be late. That's the thing. You better not be late come Monday morning. You got to be here at 8 o'clock. We're going to meet you at the gate. We're going to get you in there. So he's right on time. He gets to the gate. And I tell you what, people at the gate of Area 51, man, they don't monkey around. If you make one wrong move, you're in deep trouble. Or you might not be in any trouble at all. You might just not make it. They're going to take you out, and it certainly isn't going to be to lunch. You got me? He's just trying to mind his P's and Q's and says, hey, I'm supposed to meet Mr. Schmidt here. He had an A51 badge, a whole 9 yards. Mr. Schmidt comes out there. He drives out there. He meets him at the gate. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Rainmaker. What's going on with you? He's not really amused, but whatever. He's very appreciative that he had that refrigerator stocked for him, right? So they take his car, they park it off to the side there at the gate of Area 51 of Dr. Rainmaker. He gets in the car with Mr. Schmidt, and they tool on down. They kind of like brief him on what's going on and what the do's and don'ts. They give him his own little badge, and they have the biometric security too, where you actually got to put your hand on this. It's like a ball looking thing like this. You put your hand on there and it reads your biometrics, and it allows you, or it enables you to get into certain parts of Area 51 just automatically. You put your hands on all these little pads and stuff, and it'll open the door, or maybe it won't. And then there's certain designated areas you're not allowed to, no matter what kind of clearance you have. You have to have like super top secret, right? Or above top secret is what it would be called, right? So he gets into the lab, and he's dealing with all these other scientists, and he's shaking their hands and that. And all these scientists, they're not into biology, right? They're into something else, human anatomy, and they're into all like gene splicing and DNA and all this crazy stuff, right? And they're trying to pull the information from him on how he was able to incorporate the water vapors and the plants to where the triggering system would be the gravity, the momentum of the raindrop falling from the sky to make that plant so quickly, right? They're trying to pull his knowledge. Knowledge is powerful. You got that? They're trying to figure out how he figured all that out. How the gravity itself would be the triggering mechanism to make sure that the plant would grow so quickly, right? So he's trying to learn them, right? And it's difficult trying to learn them. Because if you see something in your mind and you know what you're thinking, but even a professional doesn't know what you're thinking. But you got the upper hand because you know it works because it's already worked in Brazil. I'll tell you what, something else. So hello, Dr. Rainmaker there. He's working with the United States military, and about 6 months later, they finally figured out a way to do the same exact thing, except not with a plant, but with a human. A hybrid. Oh yeah. Half human, half machine, if you can even imagine. And they did the same exact thing. So what they did was they cordoned off an entire area of Area 51, which is massive, by the way, as far as land mass goes. And they went up and they seeded the clouds, and they figured that so many millions of drops of rain would fall out of this cloud or clouds. We're not talking about big monstrous thunderstorms. No, we're just talking regular rain. So they had to figure out what the temperature was going to be, what the wind speed was going to be. They had to make sure that it was incredibly warm that day. They had to make sure that there was no high wind so it would blow the rain up and make hail. They couldn't have that. They had to make absolutely sure everything was set up perfectly to run this experiment. But you see, they figured that it wouldn't be one raindrop per million. They figured that it would be 100 success rates per million drops. Instead of plants, it would be half human, half machine. It would be hybrid. So they got everything set up. They got it all cordoned off. They got everybody on the base of Area 51. They've told everybody they have to stay out of that area. This is going to be like an experiment like no other. And even though Dr. Rainmaker, he knows what's going to happen. He's not really sure how it's all going to happen, but he knows the end result. He knows what the military is up to. And it's not like he can sabotage anything because you got all these other scientists. Got all these armed guards, and they're running around big old metal protectors. There's no way out of it. Plus, he already learns them how to do everything. But this is the big test. The big test. Whew. So here it is, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I got the big old clouds up there, and we're not talking about nimbocumulus. No, sir, no, ma'am. We're talking about just like cumulus clouds. Not the nimbos, just the cumulus. Right? The wind speed is only about 2 miles an hour. The temperature is about 86 degrees. There is absolutely no lightning or any of that stuff. Right? It's just going to be a little bit of rain. Well, they figure how they got it all seeded up and such, because weather manipulation, that's been around forever. Since at least the late 40s, early 50s. Hell, he knows all about it because his dad was involved in that big old experiment back in the day where 35 Brits, lost their lives because all that rain that fell, 90 million tons of water fell on that little bitty town. So he knows all about it. And all the action's supposed to happen about 3:30. So you have all of these men with their metal protectors of the automatic kind. They're all stationed and positioned by about 5 square miles, right? On every corner, and they're all ready to go in case something goes wrong. It starts to rain. Oh, does it start to rain. But what happens? No. Nothing goes wrong. Everything goes right. Matter of fact, it goes too right. They go up there and they seed all the clouds there to make it rain. Dr. Rainmaker's up there, and he's with all the other scientists, or a couple of scientists in the plane. They're just trying to get everything just right. And sure enough, the triggering action is of the momentum and the gravity of the raindrop falling from the sky down to the ground. Well, what are you talking about? Maybe less than a minute, or a minute, a couple of minutes? And instead of turning into a little bitty plant, no sir, no ma'am, it starts with a little small raindrop, and as these raindrops keep falling, by the time they hit the ground, it's a full-size human being, half man, half machine. Oh yeah, they all look the same. They're all the same height. They're all the same mass. They're all of the same intelligence. But it's not 1 per million. No sir, no ma'am. It's like 500,000 per million. And how many raindrops fell on that historic day at Area 51? How many raindrops actually fell? Tens of millions. They got a big problem, because now, ladies and gentlemen, there is literally about a 7 million man army that is on the property of Area 51. Half human, half machine. They're totally unarmed, but it doesn't matter, because under the adage, as far as the military goes, might is right. And certainly the half-human, half-machines outnumber all of the men with their metal protectors on the ground that have surrounded the 5 square mile area. It's almost hysterical. They could easily overpower every single person. They don't have enough munitions to take these hybrids on. There's millions of them. Millions. Oh yeah. So Mr. Schmidt's in a real pickle now, because he's got to place a call into a couple of the military bases in and around the area. He doesn't have time to sit there and explain to all of the soldiers that are coming in that have to protect the base now, because there's literally millions of these half-human, half-machines that have fallen out of the sky, literally, and now they're confronting the individuals with their metal protectors of the automatic kind, but there's just not enough of them in case something goes wrong. And what happens next? Something goes wrong. It sure does. Because as these half-human, half-machines are looking for some sort of direction, there's too many of them to deal with that sort of direction. They have all been programmed to fight, and that's what they're doing. There is panic going on at Area 51. They're calling in backups, and they don't have enough time to sit there and go through some sort of security clearance through all the soldiers. They just are being commanded by certain commanders and just told, listen, what you see today is top secret. That's all there is to it. That's an order. So thousands of men are going into Area 51 to deal with this situation, but there's millions of half man, half machines getting busy. They sure are. And they're strong too. They are strong. Oh yeah. Do they get it under control? Yes, they finally get it under control. But they have to eliminate close to 1 million of these half machine, half humans, because the experiment works so well above and beyond the theoretical projection of what they thought it would be. They thought it would be 100 soldiers, so to speak, half human, the hybrids, half human, half machine. They figured 100 per million drops. That's above and beyond Dr. Rainmaker's 1 plant per million. But it was more like 500,000 per million. Oh, I'll tell you what, it's something else. It is something else. But yes, they finally did get it under control. Yeah. So just imagine, depending on the programming, depending on how the next future event were to take place, that would mean that the United States military at this very point in time could manufacture an army within one rainstorm. I'm Monograph, and if you can't speak freely or simply not free,